You guys may know Goosebumps and you guys may know The Haunting Hour, but do you guys know R.L. Stine's other book series? And no, I'm not talking about Fear Street. Of course, I am talking about The Nightmare Room. I mean, it's literally in the title of the video. But The Nightmare Room was a short-lived series written by R.L. Stine in the very early 2000s. Essentially, it's just a rebranded Goosebumps, but not Goosebumps. You see, Goosebumps mania was a big thing throughout the early to mid-90s, but near the end of the decade, despite trying to keep up with its audience, the hype kind of fell off. I also imagine that R.L. Stine maybe kind of wanted to branch out from that IP, and thus, The Nightmare Room was born. Now, for the sake of research for this video, I actually read a couple of Goosebumps books and Nightmare Room books, and yeah, they're pretty much the same. I guess if anything, maybe The Nightmare Room is a bit more explicit with its descriptions, but even then, it's on a book-by-book basis, because there's some truly fucked up Goosebumps books out there. So The Nightmare Room kind of flopped and ended as soon as it started, with possibly the events of 9/11 being a reason? What the fuck? Oh, it's from the fandom wiki. Yeah, okay, that checks out. But a couple years later, R.L. Stine would go back to writing Goosebumps yet again with the Goosebumps Horrorland series of books, which I absolutely loved as a kid. And so The Nightmare Room faded into obscurity. With only 12 books to this series and a publication date that only lasted a year's length, The Nightmare Room seems to be an obscure gem. Which is why I was surprised so many of you guys want me to talk about this series, because... Hold on a second, I'm getting a call. Hey, what's up? Yeah, no, I'm talking about The Nightmare Room right now. Yeah, no. Wait, what? There was a TV show? Yeah, people wanted to hop on whatever R.L. Stine was cooking up because of the sheer dominant force that was Goosebumps throughout the 90s. And so, The Nightmare Room TV series was born. And just like the book series, it came and went so fucking fast, with the show only having 1 season and 13 episodes. So, let's rank them. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time again. Rankings are decided by these 3 factors right here. I suppose if you watch enough of this series already, you've come to know my ranking criteria and are tired of me explaining it all the time, so I'm going to save you the time and me the breath. And as per usual, 2-parters will be counted as 1 episode, so while there's a total of 13 episodes, we will only be ranking 12 episodes. Yeah, really. Just like Creeped Out beforehand, there is only 1 2-parter in the entire series. And one final thing before we dive into this ranking proper, I am so sorry for the video quality on some of these episodes. You see, this series is impossible to find online in official or unofficial capacity. It doesn't stream on anything, you can't buy it off of anything, and you can't find a torrent worth a damn. That being said, the whole series is actually really easy to watch. Like, there's several different playlists here on YouTube, but the quality, yeah, it's either giving 2008 YouTube on a BlackBerry Storm, or there's this big old watermark in the bottom right. So I apologize in advance, but this was honestly the best I could do. Finding good quality footage is next to impossible. So anyways, without further ado, this is every episode of The Nightmare Room, ranked from worst to best. Enjoy.
Or you may find yourself in The Nightmare Room. The Nightmare Room.
My Name is Evil is a strange episode, and not like a good kind of strange, but more of a like, some things just don't make sense and made me genuinely rewind certain moments to make sure I didn't miss something. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does have a lot of good things going for it. I felt like the acting and chemistry between the characters were really good, and the music through the episode was strangely really good. But then again, the chemistry and dialogue between every character throughout the series is consistently really good, with the exception of 1 episode later on, which I'll talk about. But also, the music is just good throughout the entire series. Like, every single episode I wrote a note saying good music, so I don't know. But this episode even starts on this creepy carnival location, and I'm a giant sucker for children's horror stories taking place in a carnival, but unfortunately, outside of the intro and a brief part halfway through, most of the story takes place in a middle school. Which, I mean, it's debatably more scary. Sometimes I get flashbacks and I swear I can still smell the Axe body spray. But the story starts with our main character and his friends celebrating his birthday at a carnival. And while they're there, they run into a fortune teller who freaks out on the main character and says there's a great evil coming. They just brush it off and end up spotting a group of popular girls from their school also at the carnival. Our main character has a crush on the central popular girl, but doesn't have the guts to approach her. But after his bros hype him all up, telling him he's the nicest person ever, he eventually takes the initiative. And not only does he fumble, but he gets teased and embarrassed. So sometimes there are things worse than rejection. The next morning, the main character wakes up with a giant rash on his arm, and this is kind of where things stop adding up. Okay, so I like the rash. It gets worse throughout the episode with the main character constantly itching it whenever he gets mad. It adds a nice sense of progressive body horror throughout the episode, even though it never really gets to a state that I would really consider grotesque. I also like how it's a visual ramification for our own main character's resentment or unchecked emotions, kind of showing the harm of bottling up your feelings. So thematically, I like everything that's going on here, but okay, let me just explain. Okay. So, since getting the rash, our main character basically has uncontrollable telepathy, and he unleashes it whenever he gets mad, right? Like, his friend ends up getting with his crush, so through telepathy, he pushes him down the stairs. Or later on, during gym class, his crush ends up talking shit to him, essentially just gaslighting him about his friends, and he gets all mad and ends up creating a sinkhole for his other friend to almost get sucked up in, right? So, there's nothing wrong with these order of events. However, the first time he uses his telepathy to push his friend down the stairs, the girl ends up freaking out and saying that she saw the main character push him. Which, okay, two things. One, she's trying to tear this friend group apart. She openly tells the main character this near the end of the episode. So even if lying, her motivation does make sense, I guess. And two, the main character was behind and far away from his friend when he fell down the stairs, but as soon as homegirl blames the main character, he automatically believes her for some reason? Once again, sure, I've seen friends turn on other friends for just an ounce of pussy, so this response is reasonable. But the second scene, the sinkhole scene, this one legitimately doesn't make sense to me. So the main character is staying hella far away, a sinkhole opens up and almost drags homeboy in, and immediately homegirl starts blaming the main character, saying that he did this somehow, and once again, immediately, everyone here just believes her. What? How? Unless I'm being led to believe that everyone just accepts the fact that this kid has telepathy now for no reason, no build-up. But yeah, that kind of is what happens. Everyone just refers to him as the cursed kid, which just seems so outlandish. Something like this could work if it was properly built up. If this show slowly built up the reputation for the main character being cursed, then sure. But the sample size is a kid falling down the stairs and a sinkhole opening up. We need more data. And this girl's level of gaslighting knows no bounds. God damn. I mean, imagine if you're sitting shotgun in a car ride with a bunch of your friends, and then suddenly y'all get into a car crash. And then your buddy in the back seat starts blaming you for that very car crash, and the driver just believes him. You know how little that would make sense? But in the end, the girl taunts the main character, saying this was all part of her master plan. And then our main character is all like, wait a minute, you were at every single one of those events too. You're the one doing this. And then she uses her powers to fling him across the cafeteria in front of everybody, and now she gets labeled as the cursed one by the entire school. Except, of course, in classic fashion, the ending shows that the main character does in fact have powers. So it kind of reframes this confrontation a little bit. Does she actually have powers, or did the main character personally throw himself across the room in order to flip the narrative? I don't know, and I'll be honest, I don't give a fuck. There is almost certainly an idea here. I think it just needed more room to breathe and maybe some examples to really get us over the finish line. Because as it stands, it's the worst episode of The Nightmare Room, but not by much. I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but out of all the Nightmare Room book covers, Locker 13 looked the coolest. And that's saying a lot because there are some truly fantastic book covers in this short series. So going into this episode, I was holding out hope that this one would be good, but well, you can see where this one ranked. Now, you may be thinking this is a story about a haunted locker, but it's not really. It's more of an episode about luck. And it actually reminds me a lot of the Haunting Hour episode called Lots of Luck, which, yeah. And not to spoil where that one ranks in my own video, but needless to say, it's not very high. So, what are the events of this story? Well, our main character's locker gets busted at the very start of this episode, and he ends up having to relocate to Locker 13, which is just in the fucking abandoned part of school, I guess? Why the fuck is it so run down back here? Well, I mean, it is public school, so, actually, never mind. It checks out. But upon receiving his new locker, he finds a good luck charm, and well, our main character is a very superstitious person. He's got boxes of good luck trinkets, and he wears a special sweatband during his wrestling matches, because he wrestles, as a good luck charm. So even though he's skeptical at first, he still decides to hold on to the charm, and almost immediately he becomes really lightheaded and dizzy, but ultimately brushes it off. I'm sure that's nothing to worry about. But he is also able to win his wrestling match, on top of getting invited to a party and getting a kiss on the cheek from a girl. But he also wins $100 from some Colin radio station thing. I mean, sure, he's growing more and more tired, but it's probably nothing, right? And we're in the locker dimension now. Okay, cool. Kind of cozy in here, actually. Yeah, so here we get introduced to the mastermind behind everything, the Fate Master. The Fate Master basically tells our main character that, yeah, the charm feeds off of your life force, and anytime something lucky occurs to you, the more life is drained. Hence why our main character was getting so fatigued. So yeah, that sucks, but it seems like a simple solution would be to just chuck the charm into a river or something, but that actually won't work either. You see, our main character actually flushes the charm down the toilet, but it ends up right back in his possession. The Fate Master explains that if he wants to be free of the charm, he has to relinquish the charm to someone else. In particular, the Fate Master really wants the charm to go to his best friend, because, I actually don't know why. I don't think they ever really gave a reason in particular. I mean, technically, the main character can just give the charm to anyone or anything that has a life force. I think the Fate Master just says it has to be his friend to make it more of a moral choice for the main character. And fair enough. I love that kind of villainy. But despite the main character's diminishing fatigue, he for no moment even humors the idea of giving the charm to his friend, and he even tells him everything. Of course, the friend doesn't believe him at first, but he eventually comes around and they devise a plan together. You see, in order to undo the effects of the charm essentially needs a new host. Meaning, if the main character gives the charm to somebody else, and then something lucky happens to him in his life, the main character is free from the curse and reverts back to normal. So in the end, the main character wins his wrestling match and becomes normal again, because as it turns out, he fed one of the frogs from his biology class the charm. And a frog may not be a person, but it is a life force. And since these frogs were going to die anyways, it was the perfect subject to give the charm to. It also means that the Fate Master will disappear because the main character was able to win his wrestling match. Therefore, the charm doesn't really have a host. Only problem? Wrestling isn't really a luck-based thing? I mean, you can get lucky in that sport, sure, whatever, but I think it's probably one of the worst sports to choose in terms of luckiness. I mean, in the book, the main character doesn't even wrestle, he actually just plays basketball, which I guess makes more sense in that regard. But yeah, sure, whatever. I guess he just got lucky with his matchup, or something. Overall, I think this episode is just a little boring. The main character gets more fatigued as the episode goes on, but the makeup never fully reflects that. Like, there's this POV shot of all these kids steering clear of the main character, and watching this, you expect the main character to look like absolute shit, but nah. He just looks like he's a little under the weather. I mean, granted, this is one of the episodes I could only find in like 240p, so maybe a better resolution would reveal better makeup, but I don't know. I think a lot of this episode is just the main character is shambling around, barely staying awake and falling asleep, and it's like, come on, sweetie. I struggle with depression too. This isn't really scary to me anymore. I think this episode just desperately needed another element at play to really hold my attention, because as is, it's not good. Now that I've been doing these ranking videos for a while, I've come to the realization that the only thing worse than a bad episode is a bad episode that had potential. And Fear games not only had potential, but a lot of potential. Like, from the premise alone, I was hooked, but ultimately, the episode not only under-delivered, but it borderline didn't even deliver at all. Okay, so this episode is essentially like the show Survivor, but with a scary horror twist. And for my younger Gen Z crowd out there, it's like Total Drama Island, but with a scary horror twist. You get a cast full of characters arriving on an island set to compete for a huge cash prize, right? This is clearly supposed to be like Survivor. However, the only problem being that it just feels like a very run-of-the-mill episode. Survivor is a reality TV show, and this episode doesn't even make an attempt to format this episode like one. I guess plot-wise, it would pretty much need a complete rewrite given how the story plays out, but that's just the thing. They had an idea and just didn't capitalize on it. I think the problem is that they play this episode too straight. It's too serious and dramatic when this should have been a fun comedic horror episode. It'd be great if some scary shit goes down and they cut to one of those confessionals, like there's gold on the table and they're just not taking it. Like, it's just a massive missed opportunity, especially since the episode starts with each character's like audition tape, which is a really funny way to do character introductions, but it also kind of sets the episode up to be a goofy, fun time, and what we get is just kind of boring. Like, nothing all too crazy happens in this episode, and it also flies by super fast. Like, this is an episode that really needed to be 2 parts. I think out of all the episodes, this one should have been completely reworked from the ground up as a 2-parter because, and I cannot stress this enough, there is massive potential here. But what do we get out of this episode? Witches. We get a bunch of witches. Yeah, so the whole thing behind this episode is that these kids arrive on this island called Tranquility Island, but they find out it's actually called Witch Island. Ooh. And then there's just a bunch of character challenges, all of which our main character passes, by the way. The game show host seems odd and mysterious. At the end, he even just leaves the island, straight up abandoning these kids, but yet again, they really just needed to play him up more, because as he stands, he just kind of comes across as a non-threat. And then a witch comes out, and one of the contestants is revealed to be a witch, and our main character defeats them, but as it turns out, it was all a part of the show, and our main character won. But then, in classic fashion, it's another reverse twist, because guess what? Those witches that were revealed to be just actors, no, they're actually witches. The fucking end. I can totally forgive this episode for not really utilizing the reality TV format if they could at least fall back on a solid episode, but nah, they couldn't even do that. I find it kind of crazy that Nightmare Room has a werewolf episode where the werewolf only has 3 seconds of screen time. Like, who out there is asking for an episode like that?
It's actually all I ever wanted out of an episode.
Wait, really?
No one ever does.
Yeah, totally. Alright, get off my channel now.
Hey, screw you, dude. Rank Creepshow already.
Okay, I'm not lying though. There is legitimately about 3 seconds of werewolf action near the end of the episode. And on paper, that isn't a horrible idea. Maybe this story is subverting the typical werewolf story, and I mean, maybe it kind of does that. Only maybe though. Much like the other bottom ranking episodes on this list, the idea is definitely there, but the execution is certainly not. Also, this is the only episode in the show's run where I feel like the acting is just really bad, specifically from the main character.
They're the only known natural enemy of werewolves. We have to get to the security system to unlock the doors. Something yanked the power cord.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. I also think some of the ADR lines sound pretty egregious. And once again, I actually like the acting throughout this entire series. It's just that this episode, whew, man. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again, these are children at the end of the day. I'm not gonna go in on them. Now, give me a bad adult actor, and I'll make fun of them until the sun comes up. But this episode revolves around this group of kids, but more importantly, this main character, who oftentimes feels left out of the group, so in return, he throws a Halloween party. However, his intentions are a bit nefarious. Well, not really nefarious, more so misleading. You see, there's been a series of animal attacks throughout the town. These characters constantly mention it throughout the episode, and our main character's younger brother fell victim to one of these animal attacks. Except, it wasn't no animal. It was a goddamn werewolf. And our main character has deduced that someone in this friend group is the werewolf. So how do you go about sussing out if one of your friends is a werewolf? Well, our main character ended up buying 5 of these creatures called plogs. And plogs are the natural hunters of werewolves. So they pass a plog around to each member in the group, and if it ends up biting one, then they're the werewolf. Pretty cut and dry situation. So when it does end up biting one person in the group, they're all ready to turn on her, but then another person reads the instruction manual and is like, guys, you might want to check this out. Turns out if plogs are exposed to light for longer than 5 minutes, they transform into human hunters. So, yeah, clearly that's not good. Also concerning the fact that there are currently 5 loose in the house. So we get this actually really fun final act of these characters hunting down these creatures. And there's a great deal of suspense given the whole ticking clock element to this story. It's really only weighed down by this stilted acting. It's also here where our main character reveals that he's been lying about everything. He says that he knows the werewolves aren't real and he really just wanted to throw this party because he wanted his friends to hang out with him. And also kind of respect him because the group kind of makes him the butt of every joke, which like, okay. I mean, that explains why he wanted to scare them with the whole werewolf mumbo jumbo, I guess. But at the same time, buying these creatures from this fucking guy is going through great lengths just to gain some respect. Surely there's gotta be an easier way. I mean, if one of my friends bought 5 feral raccoons to get my respect, I'm never talking to the guy ever again. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, if he slayed 5 feral raccoons with his bare hands, then yeah, that guy's got my respect. But they end up catching all the plogs and locking them back in the box, and everything seems good, but as it turns out, one of their friends actually was a werewolf, and the episode ends. I wasn't joking about those 3 seconds of werewolf action. It's really alright though, because the episode isn't technically a werewolf episode, but I think it's just funny. Oh, and by the way, the girl that gets bit by the plog is actually the werewolf. She also talks about how she has to get home before her curfew throughout the entire episode. It's actually pretty easy to see this ending coming, but it's still a nice little cherry on top of an episode that could have been a little more. School Spirit is a less than average episode I actually have a lot to say about. That I will not be saying in this video because I actually have an entire video covering this episode if you want to check it out. But the basic gist of this episode is that these kids are all stuck in detention and one by one they slowly all get picked off. The pacing is much to be desired and there's some particularly bad special effects. But once again, I go into way more depth in my other videos, so check it out. This episode has a great concept and a less than great execution. You see, this episode centers around these kids who find this device called the Howler, and essentially it's a machine that allows people to talk to ghosts, like a little ghost FaceTime device. It's actually pretty sick. And of course, the main trio is pretty divided on this technology. You got the main guy who is all for it and wants to crank call the dead. You got the skeptical girl who doesn't care for it, let alone thinks it even works. And then you got the other guy who is just strangely very neutral on this entire situation. I mean, yeah, sure, talking to ghosts is pretty cool, but like, I'm not gonna clear my schedule for that. But if they catch me on an off day of work, then yeah, I'll have a little chat with them. Like, where's the fucking energy, dude? It's ghosts. It's cool. But the three are able to make contact only for a brief second before they lose connection. I mean, I don't know, they probably got Mint Mobile or something. But they figure that they have to take the Howler to a place called the Pit. As they deduce, that's where the reception would be best, given the fact that the ghosts they were talking to originally disappeared in the Pit. And no, the Pit isn't referring to Pittsburgh. It's actually referring to a dilapidated, rundown building. So, Pittsburgh. Yeah, it's Pittsburgh. But upon using the device, every member in the group ends up getting zap fried and passes out. The first to wake up is the girl. However, she is not herself anymore. She is now being possessed by one of the ghosts, and the real girl is trapped in the howler. So essentially, this machine just stores souls. So now that one of the ghosts is in possession of the girl's body, the two remaining ghosts tell her to wake up the others and do it again. However, the other friends wake up and are all like, man, fuck that. Let's not do that shit again. But of course, the girl is super persistent about using the machine again to get all their ghost buddies into mortal bodies. But because the girl was originally the skeptic in the group, the other two find her change in attitude strange, but ultimately carry on. Then there's like this really weird subplot that gets brought up and kind of goes nowhere. Okay, so at the start of the episode, we get introduced to this science teacher. And by introduced, I mean he's in like one scene for like 10 seconds and has like one line. And after the soul swap, the girl, now possessed by the ghost, goes up to the teacher and is all like, do you remember this one person you flunked 4 years ago? The ghost in the scene is referring to himself, by the way. And the teacher is all like, yeah, that kid was pretty fucking dumb. Anyways, bye. And then that's it. I guess the implication is that these 3 ghosts were trying to come back to harm the teacher for flunking them or whatever, but it really doesn't go anywhere? I don't know. It's super strange. Anyways, another ghost ends up inhabiting the body of the other guy, and the main kid learns the truth. So essentially what we get is these 2 ghosts possessing these bodies, and these 2 kids trying to force the final kid to swap souls. But in the end, the final kid just uses the machine in reverse, and that just undoes everything. Like, yeah, sure, simple solutions for a simple story. And then they end up smashing the machine to pieces from just one throw. Like, did y'all get this off Temu? What the fuck? But the twist ending is that the machine reassembles itself and a police officer ends up stumbling across it and one of the ghosts possesses the officer. I think this is one of the most middle of the road episodes in this show. It doesn't really do anything good, but it also doesn't do anything bad. Hard to hate, hard to love. If anything, I think this may just be the most forgettable episode in the series. And as a recording note, I wrote this script a week ago and I'm just now recording it. And I did, in fact, completely forget about this episode. So, that says a lot.
Nightmare room.
So Camp Nowhere is Nightmare Room's first and only 2-parter, which means we get to play our favorite game on this channel. Say it with me now. Is it worth 2 parts? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. On this game show, we like to determine if 2-parters are really worth their 2 parts. And looks like all the votes are in. And survey says, kind of. Great. Yeah, so I think this episode takes the Haunting Hour approach in terms of being a 2-parter. That is to say, it is an overall unified story, but part 1 is something and part 2 is something different. I'll break it down real quick. Part 1 is about these kids sleeping in a haunted cabin, and it's very much the people versus the cabin. Very much like Evil Dead, but you know, very PG. And then in part 2, it's the same group of kids wandering into a camp full of ghosts. Once again, it tells a complete story, but each part has its own identity. But I think the ultimate problem within regards to this format is that each episode seems a little underbaked in my opinion. Like part 1 kind of has a lot of heavy lifting to do up front with establishing characters, settings, and stakes. So by the time they get to all this spooky cabin stuff, the episode is like half over and they kind of brush by it real fast. Meanwhile, part 2 kind of has the opposite effect. They have so much time to explore this new ghost camp setting that I feel as if the pacing really hinders because of it. Like, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the moving pieces for the ghost camp stuff were kind of set up in part 1, so that by the time part 2 comes around, it makes the slow build-up and reveal agonizing because it's like, we know exactly where this is going. What's the point in slow rolling us here? And in the middle of all this, we got fucking Frankie Muniz making a brief cameo appearance. And if you think that'll be the only Malcolm in the Middle cast member to make an appearance on this show, well, let's just say wait a little bit longer. Okay, so in part 1, these campers are selected to spend the night in some cabin 3 miles away because it's said to be haunted. It's kind of like a hazing ritual, or rather, a rite of passage and whatnot. Leading up to the departure, people are trying to mess with the group, telling campfire tales of how indigenous Native Americans cursed the land, or how one morning someone chiseled this foreboding message into the floor, which leads to the stupidest and funniest exchanges of all time.
It's chiseled.
You mean, like with a chisel?
I don't know why I find that so funny. But eventually, after a long hike, they make it to the cabin. They end up sleeping in it, scary shit happens, and then they're off on their way home. But they get lost, and in their way back, they stumble into a group of kids who circle around the group chanting "Ghost." Eventually, the camp counselor is like, "Oh, those silly kids. Ghost is what they call spies because we got other camps spying on us for whatever. Hey, drink some multicolored juice, and I'll call the camp counselor and let them know you're safe." And yeah, they kind of quickly learn that these kids are ghosts. All these kids only seem to know things from the 1960s. Like Malcolm over here. He doesn't have a clue who Michael Jordan is. Or how the group overheard some girls talking about the last concert they went to being the Beatles. But despite all this evidence building up, nobody puts the pieces together until Four Eyes over here spills the beans on everything. You see, throughout the whole ordeal, these counselors are trying to hide the fact that they're ghosts from these kids. Like cutting phone lines or redirecting the kids and whatnot. But Glasses over here? Nah, he's itching to tell somebody what's going on. So here's the skinny. Long ago, natives put a spell on the land, and in the 1960s, these campers ended up camping there and damaging the land. So native spirits came to drag them away. However, the head counselor made a deal with them, that they get to return to the living once a year, every year, for one weekend in summer, as long as they don't damage the environment. Sounds like a really shitty deal if you ask me, but hey, they go through with it. But that's why Glasses wants to tell somebody the truth, because he never wanted to go on this camping trip in the first place, and his soul just wants to move on and rest. And so Glasses takes an axe and is ready to chop down a tree, which of course would break the deal about not damaging the land. Oh, and because these kids entered the perimeter of the ghost camp, they're considered ghosts now too. Meaning, if that kid strikes that tree with the axe, everyone will disappear forever. So Glasses starts striking the tree down. Everyone freaks out, but our main character jumps in and stops him from doing any more harm. But the damage is already done, so this whole camp, it just disappears. Poof, bye, gone. They didn't hold up their end of the deal, so they're gone. And our group of characters almost disappear too, but a native spirit stops the main character and is like, yo, you stop that kid from doing any more damage to the land, that's fucking sick. And then they just let the group live out of courtesy, I guess. And then the group returns back to the camp victorious, and yeah. There's no twist at the end of this episode. It's an actual good ending for once. I mean, that does depend on your definition of a good ending. We did just see a full camp of kids cease to exist, but, you know, silver linings and whatnot. So overall, it's not a bad two-parter by any means, but I feel as if it's just a little mismanaged in terms of pacing. Have you ever watched John Carpenter's They Live and thought, man, I wish there was a version for kids without all this social commentary? No? Well, they made an episode like it anyways, so have fun. And I'm not trying to insinuate that this episode is bad because of that. This is actually a really fun and good episode. But in the end of the day, it really is just They Live, but for kids. You see, our main character goes to an eye doctor played by goddamn John C. McGinley, who is all like, you need glasses, kid. And of course, the kid is disappointed by this. He thinks he looks nerdy in glasses, and he even gets picked on for it, but like, am I crazy? But he looks way better in glasses. You know what? Vote down below. Let your voices be heard. Glasses or no glasses? Okay, looks like your votes are in, and they are pointless. So moving on. But I guess it really is just classic R.L. Stine storytelling of playing to the tropes of what kids worry about and making it terrifying. So nice. But the glasses end up revealing that some people are secretly monsters, with the first encounter being some random guy in an alley, and then the other being the principal of his school. Our main character freaks out and tries to show his friend, but when she puts on the glasses, she sees nothing, so I guess the glasses only work on him. Oh yeah, and then there's this guy in a raincoat following our main character. It's the eye doctor. Yeah, there's no point in really building up the reveal because the show doesn't really do that either. But the eye doctor reveals the truth to our main character. Turns out that there's an alien invasion, and slowly people are being infected without even knowing it, and that these glasses reveal the truth. So yeah, these aren't really monsters, they're aliens. Cool. But the eye doctor says to the main character that he must defeat the leader to undo the secret invasion. The only description he gives of the leader is that they have pitch black eyes, and then cops roll up and escort him away, telling the main character that he's clinically insane, but of course, these cops are actually just aliens too. So then we end up at this party in a barn for some reason, and at one point our main character's glasses get stepped on, but like, this only results in a slight crack in the lenses. It doesn't really have any bearing on the plot whatsoever. Like, it doesn't really raise the peril of the situation at hand. I guess now the main character has to look a little more carefully, but like, I don't know. But yeah, lots of aliens at this party trying to stop the main character as he desperately tries to search for the leader. Eventually, he just books it and gets out of there once they openly all turn on him. Luckily, his friend is nearby and picks him up in the car when it turns out, the main character's best friend is actually the leader. Cut to credits. Now, originally, I thought this was a dumb twist that didn't even make sense. Like, did this girl at some point just arbitrarily become the leader? Cause like, she was with him at the eye doctor. She was with him when he physically got the glasses, and there was other times he saw her with the glasses, right? Well, no, actually. I went back and watched the episode again just to double check, but the main character never looks at his friend with the glasses on. He gets the glasses but doesn't put them on until they split up, and when he goes to pull her from class to talk to her, before he reaches the door he trips and falls and loses his glasses. And then in this scene, he never puts on the glasses again until she goes back to class, so yeah, good job. I mean, I guess it is the bare minimum for this story to work, but still, good job.
Nightmare
Okay, before I talk about this episode proper, I'm just gonna say that for the last 4 entries on this ranking, you're going to be seeing some true child acting legends from the 2000s. In this episode alone, we got the legend Amanda Bynes. Bring out the dancing lobsters. But I think this episode is really good when it comes to psychological horror in a way that I haven't seen in children's horror before. Like, children are kinda dumb, right? They're smarter than we give them credit for, but they're still ultimately pretty dumb. You can't really be throwing out anything too high concept in horror to these kids and expect them to be affected the same way us adults would be. But this episode plays on the idea of being forgotten, and it's truly effective. You see, this family moves into a new house, and outside of some glowing cracks in the basement, it's a pretty nice house all things considered. However, there is a man outside stalking the house, which takes a nefarious turn once the parents leave for the day. But there's bigger things to worry about when the younger brother starts slowly losing his memory. He forgets where his bedroom is, and he doesn't remember how to play video games. Hell, he doesn't even really know the concept of a video game. This freaks out Amanda, especially when he keeps insisting on playing in the basement. But then one day, Amanda herself starts forgetting about her little brother. And when she mentions it to her best friend has no clue who she's even talking about. This sends her into a complete spiral, but the stalker from earlier finally confronts her, saying that the house is the Forget-Me house, and that all the children who ever lived there are slowly forgotten and slipped into the cracks of the basement. And she's all like, dude, you're crazy. And he's like, girl, honey, sweetie, I'm one of those children. So she runs back home to her parents, and her parents don't even remember her, and I kind of wish they explored this aspect a little bit more, because your parents forgetting who you are is a truly frightful thought. But all Amanda does is show them a family picture and they all get their memory back pretty much instantly and move on. It's kind of lame. You know, it's kind of like the ending to Gravity Falls for me. No spoilers or anything, but the rapid rate of habilitation kind of lessened the sacrifice of that character in their final moments. I mean, neither here nor there, but they were so close to a perfect ending there. And this episode was close to a truly fantastic scene. But they all head down to the basement, and all of the kids forgotten into time emerge from the cracks in the basement in a straight up disturbing scene. Oh, and like the little brother is able to come back because of family love, and you're never forgotten if you're wanted or whatever. Pretty schlocky, but sure, okay. But what's truly great about this final scene is the man that escaped. He laments that after escaping the cracks, he realized he lives in a world where nobody knows him, nobody remembers him, nobody loves him. And he'd rather spend the rest of his days in the cracks, and so he returns. It's actually really sad and gives this ending a really somber and bittersweet feeling. But in the end, the family moves out and a new family moves in. And as I've said before in past ranking videos, I'm a sucker for endings where the cycle just starts all over again. I wasn't joking about the star power of these last couple rankings, because not only do we have Shia LaBeouf as the main character, but we also got Dylan and Cole Sprouse as the central villain in this episode. There's only one villain in the episode, by the way. It's not like the twins play two separate villains. But this episode is a R.L. Stine specialty, as in it is an evil doll episode, with a slight spin on the concept that is actually worth a damn. You see, this episode centers around a young Shia essentially growing up. He's in his final days of 8th grade and he's packing up all his toys because he's too old for them now. But one toy in specific doesn't want to go. One doll in specific wants to play. So then one day at school, this little kid approaches Shia and says that they're best friends. And Shia humors the kid, but ultimately says he's got the wrong guy. When the kid persists, Shia becomes concerned and creeped out, but ultimately annoyed. And so, as revenge, this kid, named Buddy, puts strawberry jam in Shia's friend's tuna sandwich. The bastard? Oh, yeah, okay, so Shia's friend is allergic to strawberries. This was established at the very start of the episode when these two are throwing away toys and whatnot. So like, it's not just some minor prank. It was a serious crime committed with malicious intent, as he actually ends up in the school's infirmary. Also, can I just say, I don't know if it's the dialogue or the actors or a mix of both, but these kids feel like actual kids and actual friends. Usually in these children horror shows, dialogue between friends sounds kind of hammy, a little Disney Channel-esque, but this episode really nailed these exchanges. Anyways, Shia ends up going home only to find the doll that looks exactly like the kid from earlier, and he ends up putting the puzzle pieces together. So this doll has the ability to transform into a physical child, and while I'm sure this concept has been done elsewhere before, it's a fun idea that nails the execution. Like, to skip forward for just a second, there's a part where Shia dismantles the doll, and when the doll takes on its human form, his body's all mangled up, and it's fantastic. So anyways, Shia realizes that this is insane and he can't really tell anyone because nobody would believe him. But the next day at school, Buddy pushes his friend off a ladder, prompting Shia to go home and scream at the doll, which is really funny out of context.
You're my best friend.
No, I'm not your best friend.
So yeah, of course the mom sees this and she does the typical thing of not believing her son. However, this following scene plays out in a real way. Like in children's horror, it's kind of a trope for the parents just to be dismissive or accusatory of the kids' warnings. But in this episode, the mom ends up taking Shia to a child psychiatrist, and Shia at least has the self-awareness to rationalize and realize how insane this situation is. In the end, Shia ends up having a heart-to-heart with Buddy where he says he just needs to move on, and that's okay. Meanwhile, the mom and Shia's friends are watching old home video footage together at a party for some reason, but this home video footage is of Shia's birthday back when he first got Buddy. And the magician in the video ends up putting a spell on the doll saying that the two will be friends forever. So these two rush back home to check on Shia, because I guess some random birthday party magician convinces them that Shia was telling the truth the entire time or something. But when they return home, they find the Buddy doll, but they also find out that Shia has been turned into a doll. So I guess they truly will be friends forever.
Nightmare
As I said before, check out the star power in this episode. Boom, fucking Drake Bell as the leading role. But they also got fucking Brenda Song in the supporting role. So in this series, we now have Zach, Cody, and now London. So, oh god. So now we really just need Ashley Tisdale to complete the full cast of Sweet Life. But this episode is so great because it has a fun concept at hand and it takes full advantage of it, while also just being a good, well-rounded story. You see, this episode centers around Drake, who's in a band with his friends and desperately wants a new guitar from his mom. But instead, his mom is like, nah, fuck you, here's an old desk, have fun. Also, Drake's bedroom just has like a Rockstar Games poster in it. Like, I don't even really have anything to say about this detail. I just wrote it down in my notes when watching the episode, and I guess I'm here talking about it now, so moving on. But within this old-ass desk is an old-ass diary, and Drake has one of the most nonchalant and casual reactions to, well, this. Like, I don't know, dude. If I opened something up and a bunch of cockroaches came pouring out, I would freak the fuck out. Also, like, he doesn't really do anything about the cockroaches. Like, he just kind of lets them wander off. Like, fucking kill them, dude. What the fuck? But anyways, cockroaches aside, this diary can predict the future. And Drake is able to put this together rather fast. So it's not like this big long build-up, and because of that, this episode can really just hit the ground running and have a little fun with this idea. Like how the diary one day says he made a shot from half court. So later on in gym class, when the teacher tells him to shoot from the 3-point line, he gets all cocky and goes for a half court shot, cause, well, he kinda knows he'll make it. And he does, and the boys get all hyped because, I mean, we are all simple creatures after all. But it does beg the question, if Drake didn't read the diary, would these events even happen? Well, that's kind of the idea the episode explores because, well, it's a horror show, so quickly these diary entries escalate. Like, one diary entry says that Drake's friend is going to break his ankle, and it's Drake's actions trying to prevent the broken ankle that causes the broken ankle. Or how later on, a diary entry reads, disastrous events in shop today. Shop referring to wood shop, by the way. And yet again, Drake's actions to prevent the event causes the event. The event, by the way, is the teacher's clothes getting stuck in the saw blade. Like, I mean, all things considered, that's not really too disastrous. But realistically, they couldn't really show this guy getting gutted by a saw blade, now could they? They could if they weren't a fucking coward! So Drake's at an impasse here. He realizes that reading the diary can be detrimental, despite some of the good luck the diary has given him. But one day after band practice, he decides to read it one more time, and the diary entails a foreboding and eerie message concerning Drake's walk home. He tries to get a ride home from Brenda Song's mom, but she's like, dude, it's a 5-minute walk home for you. No. And then Drake proceeds to walk home, and he gets hit by a car and fucking dies. Well, not really. It's all a dream sequence.
My coffee's gonna be way nicer than this.
No, it won't.
Yes, it will.
No, it won't.
Yes.
So at this point, Brenda Song deduces that the diary can predict the future and just steals it for herself. Not really knowing the full ramifications of the diary, but hey, she was able to bring an umbrella for the rainy weather that wasn't forecast that day because of the diary, so that's cool. Eventually, Drake steals the diary back and reads the final message saying, "Dear diary, I'm dead." And Drake, in this scenario, thinks the final message is talking about Brenda, because she had possession last. So he rushes over to save her, but yet again, Drake's own prevention is his downfall. You see, Drake comes over soaking wet, sees Brenda holding a bunch of wires and takes them from her, trying to save her, but this ends up killing him. And then the twist ending for this episode is that Drake is actually stuck in a time loop and is set to repeat these days over and over again. And I guess that's why the diary can predict the future, and like, yeah, sure. I not only buy it, but I kinda love this ending a lot.
The nightmare room.
I think this is the first time so far in these ranking videos where the fun episode ended up at the very top of the list. And, well, that's because this episode is so much goddamn fun. And it's also got Reese from Malcolm in the Middle as the main character. But this episode takes the idea of what if somebody's lies came true?
Like Usopp?
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, get that weeb shit out of here. But yeah, one day a substitute teacher places a curse on this child for lying about why he doesn't have his homework. Also, the lie wasn't something like, my dog ate it. Homeboy straight up elaborated a whole story about escaped prisoners in clown masks breaking into his house and robbing them. And the sub is like, okay, bet. And then we get a bunch of rapid fire lies out of Reese. Truly, this man will lie at the drop of a hat. So in order, he lies about a mummy escaping from a museum for some reason. When bullies pick on him, he lies about having an older brother that just got home from military school, so they better not pick on him. And then when they throw his backpack on the ground, he lies about it being filled with snakes. Except, snakes start slowly crawling out of it. Of course, we, the audience, kind of know what's going on at this point, but our main character? Yeah. In true Reese fashion, he's a little dense, and it's gonna take a while for him to catch on to what's going on. And so it actually creates this great juxtaposition, because we, the audience, get to squirm every time a new lie is introduced, knowing that at some point, it's going to come true, and that's really fun to watch. So when he lies about having ninja bodyguards, it gets me all giddy, because like, we're gonna see that. So yeah, later on that night, escaped prisoners in clown masks break in to steal their shit. Even Reese's homework, like his lie originally stated. And later on at school, the older brother from the military comes in and saves Reese from the bullies, but then proceeds to terrorize Reese in the process. And when he gets called to the principal's office, they threaten to call home, but he lies about his parents being in Hawaii. And immediately after that, he lies to some friend about a pro wrestler hating his guts for some reason. But now, we get to see all these dominoes fall. So Reese gets home from school and he can't find his parents. Turns out, no surprise, they're in Hawaii. And this is the moment where he's finally like, oh shit, my lies are coming true. And then the clowns come back, along with the military brother. But luckily, the ninja bodyguards come out to protect Reese, but like, they're easily persuaded.
He's over here.
Hey! Whatever he's paying, I'll double it.
So these guys all scuffle, and it's a really fun and ridiculous set piece, but Reese manages to get away by telling himself, or rather lying to himself, that he's all alone. And yeah, as you may guess, his lie makes him all alone in the world. This may cause characters to freak out and panic, but Reese kind of just takes this moment to breathe and self-reflect. And when he's ready, he tells himself that everyone but the clowns, brother, and ninjas can come back. And life just moves on normal again. Except Reese totally forgot about the mummy lie from earlier, so he's got to deal with that now, and yeah, he also lied about the pro wrestler now, so... But he ends up trapped in an office and sees no way to get out, so he lies about the school being on fire to create some sort of diversion, and well, the school goes up in flames. And when he tries to reach for the door handle, he ends up burning his hand, and oh, what the fuck? Holy shit! That is some truly gruesome makeup effects that you would see in something like Tales from the Crypt, not a fucking children's anthology horror show. So shout out to the makeup department. I don't really know if they knew they were working on a kid's show though. And the whole episode ends with a grown-up Reese, who is now a teacher, warning one of his students about lying while looking at his burn scars. It's beautiful. A story that is just fun the whole way through and never really lets its foot off the gas. And once all the dominoes are properly set up, it's so much fun watching them all topple over one by one. A story about a boy wrapped in his own tangled web of lies. So, it's pretty common for me to ask at the end of these videos, but what should I rank next? But also, out of the 3 R.L. Stine shows I've ranked already, which one is your favorite? I genuinely want to know. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time with another ranking video, but for now, as always, thanks for watching.